Mes amis, I could carry or paddle or walk with any man I ever saw. I have been for 24 years a canoeman and 41 years in the King's service.
And when Joliet came down, one of his prime objectives was to exploit the land. And when they brought the Western or European civilization with them, they did exploit the land. We did more than that. In many cases, we crucified it.
Derrière chez nous, y a tant d'étangs.
En roulant ma boule.
Derrière chez nous, y a tant d'étangs.
En roulant ma boule.
Once again, they came from the north, singing their songs, braving the elements, bringing to life the dimly remembered pages of history, telling what this land was like and what it has become, proving that modern men are the equal of those legendary heroic figures who ventured boldly into the unknown to open a continent. The voyageurs of North America.
Le fils du roi s'en va chassant, en roulant ma boule, avec son grand fusil d'argent. Oui, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, avec son grand fusil d'argent, en roulant ma...
May 17th, 1973. A cold morning at St. Ignace, Michigan, on the Mackinac Straits. 7 men begin an attempt to relive the adventure of Father Jacques Marquette and Louis Jolliet and their 5 voyageur companions. Their equipment is as close as possible to the equipment used by the original explorers. Their reasons are varied for attempting to duplicate the backbreaking voyage. All these men share the conviction history has slighted the importance of the voyageurs' role in developing America's heartland. They have accepted a 300-year-old challenge in the hopes of bringing history to life, and so to correct the historical oversight.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Father in heaven, we begin this expedition in your hands, not knowing some of the trials, not knowing many of the joys. But we do begin with hope and with a great spirit, a spirit which the first voyageurs had.
37-year-old Father Charles McHenry, teacher and associate pastor in a parish in Chicago's West Side ghetto.
I really thought it was important that a Jesuit take the part of Marquette. I had the opportunity to do that, and I liked the idea of the entire voyage, what it was representing and why it was being undertaken. The idea that really captured me, though, was the opportunity to represent the society on a voyage like this.
All the men are volunteers. 32-year-old Reed Lewis is Louis Joliet. In his normal life, he's a high school French teacher. Jim Phillips is a 42-year-old environmental science teacher. 33-year-old Ken Lewis, a writer, Reed's brother. 29-year-old Lee Broski, a high steel worker and an adventure guide. 38-year-old Dean Campbell, an historical interpreter. 29-year-old Bill Dwyer, an engineering technician. Joliet and Marquette did not know what to expect when they left here. Indians had warned them there were horrible monsters in the lands to the west, monsters that would devour men and canoes together. These men know there are no monsters. They know the route they will follow. They don't know what to expect of the lakes, the rivers, and the weather. None has faced this type of challenge before. They have no margin for error. Survival time in the cold northern waters is 7 minutes. On his first day, Father Marquette wrote in his journal, "We are about to begin a voyage, the duration of which we cannot foresee." Today, Father McHenry begins his journal.
We made 8 miles today in heavy seas. Once we were blown ashore and had to wait for the wind and waves to calm down. We wonder now if it's possible to reach Green Bay by the 27th of May.
The first stop on their route is Epiphet, a tiny hamlet nestled along the rugged coast of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Louis Jolliet financed his voyage. He hoped to be rewarded with trading rights in the land he discovered. His men had to hunt and fish for food and hope for hospitality from the Indians they met. These men are financing their voyage. They will be able to complete it only through the goodwill and hospitality of the people they meet. In return for such help, they offer a glimpse of history and how it must have been.
Any man I ever saw. I have been 24 years a canoeman and 41 years in service. No portage was ever too long for me, eh? 50 songs could I sing. I have saved the life of 10 voyageurs. About 12 wives and 6 running dogs. I spent all my money in pleasure, but were I young again, I should live my life the same way over. There is no life so happy as the life of a voyageur.
They will perform 165 times, as many as 5 times in one day, and still match the original schedule of Joliet and Marquette. Matching that schedule will mean paddling up to 82 miles in a single day.
We continue to be lucky with the weather. The lake is incredibly calm for this time of year. Our paddling stroke is now up to 58 strokes a minute. We eat in our canoes to save time because even though we're island hopping, we still have to cross up to 15 miles of open water at a stretch.
The handcrafted canoes were built with painstaking care. They serve as more than a means of transportation. For 126 nights, they'll camp out in this fashion. The original voyageurs perfected this technique of using the canoe to set up camp quickly and provide shelter from the elements. The French and Jesuit explorers and the voyageurs learned how to live in the wilderness from the Indians. The Indian designed one of history's most practical and efficient machines, the canoe. And the French used the canoe to open a continent. In 1670, the French influence in North America extended as far west as Sault Ste. Marie. From the Sioux, fur traders and missionaries fanned out over a vast area, traveling on a network of lakes and streams. A single trading venture often covered more than 3,000 miles. The Jesuit missionaries were anxious to expand their geographical knowledge in the hopes of bringing Christianity to previously unknown Indian nations. The government of New France encouraged people to penetrate the unknown so that certain questions might be answered. Where did the great rivers end? Was there a navigable water route through the North American landmass through which France could dominate trade with the Orient? Was there a series of rivers that would make it possible to completely encircle the English colonies and confine them to the Atlantic seaboard? By 1672, the Jesuits had opened a mission at St. Ignace on the Mackinac Straits under the leadership of Father Jacques-Marquette. Wandering Indians had told Father Marquette of a great river to the west and lands unknown to white men. Father Marquette was a lean, hardy man, accustomed to living under difficult conditions. It was common for the Jesuit missionaries to canoe 1,500 or more miles with Indians in early winter and then to spend the winter with the tribe, living in primitive conditions. Father Marquette was chosen to accompany Louis Jolliet on his mission to explore and chart the great river to the west and to claim all lands for France. He knew they would face many difficult and dangerous passages, passages that exist even today.
Since the trip began, we've all dreaded crossing Porte de Mort, the doorway of death. The conflicting currents in this channel off Washington Island, Wisconsin, create swirling haystack waves that have claimed many lives. We left at dawn, hoping for calm waters. The natives tell us they don't ever remember seeing the doorway so calm.
The weather changes just as the open water is safely behind. Nature shows what might have been as they come to Green Bay, Wisconsin. The Coast Guard is asked to shepherd them in the last dangerous mile and a half. The Coast Guard refuses. It's too rough for their cruiser in the bay. The experience of this day is used by Ken Lewis in relating to audiences in the months ahead.
We came through a terrible storm right on Green Bay. And of all the voyageurs, I, Pierre Moreau, I rode through this storm and I was not afraid. I was not afraid of this storm at all. And there were waves blowing behind the canoe, giant waves that would come crashing down on the canoe like a waterfall. And I was not afraid at all, really. And we were paddling and we were trying to get to shore, and suddenly I look behind me and I see coming down on the canoe the biggest wave that I have ever seen in my life. This wave was so big, it was 20 feet. It was 15 feet tall. It was a very big wave. And this wave come descending on the canoe. And I look around at the people who are riding in the canoe with me. I look at Le Petit Flocon, this giant of a man, this great bear of a man, and he is bending his paddle, and he does not know what to do. And then I turn and I look at Sieur Louis Jolliet. Ladies and gentlemen, a French nobleman, and he did not know what to do. But I, Pierre Moreau, I knew what to do. I closed my eyes.
The weather really is causing problems. The wind and rain flooded the yacht club where we left our canoes, and we had quite a struggle to rescue them. Finally, we built a fire in a park to dry out and just sat around talking about what we've seen so far.
Well, to me, one of the important things has been the adjustment to a natural world, to a time schedule set by the sun, to navigation in the fog, which was, I think, a real strange experience and being almost totally disoriented at times and being dictated to by wind and wave and rain. Yeah, these things to me are very...
They were children of the weather.
Yes.
You know, you have to admit, I was kind of surprised at one thing when we came through the opening there when that third wave washed us through and we saw you guys bailing out there. I figured that you had just zipped on through and I didn't realize that the water was really that bad until I just figured, well, I made a mistake back there and got broached sideways in that wave.
We had about 6 or 8 inches of water in it.
That's my theory, Jim, is that these guys are just as inept as we are, but they keep smiling.
That's our secret.
We sail with finesse.
We really don't know how to sail.
We almost sank with finesse.
Big smiles on their face and up to their matises in water.
Right.
Grin and bear it.
Yeah, but you notice the changes in the environment through the intrusion of man. As they started out, we could drink the water from where it just dip in and drink from your paddles and that. And now, as we get to where man has concentrated his forces around certain living areas, that the products of those areas are put into the environment. And now we're faced with a different situation. It's like we're closing one chapter and going into another.
The idyllic part of the voyage is over. Grueling physical challenges lie ahead. And now they are surrounded by people, on display 24 hours a day.
He forced this paddle. It brought us all the way through the lake without swamping.
Joliet and Marquette ascended a river and a series of lakes in what is now the state of Wisconsin. They finally came to a portage that took them to the Wisconsin River. Indians guided them through a maze of swamps and helped portage the canoe.
Some weight now. Can you move back or forward, Chuck? And does it make any difference?
Today, the portage distance is still 1.5 miles. The temperature is in the 90s. 3 grueling round trips are required. The original voyageurs were small men, 5 feet or so in height. Small men were chosen to allow more room in the canoes for furs and trade goods. Though small, the voyageurs were tremendously strong. The literature of the voyageurs tells of how at each portage they would load 2 90-pound packs on their backs and half run across the portage.
That the voyageurs picked up 190, 2 90-pound packs and ran between portages was full of... right up to their eyeballs.
Upon entering the Wisconsin River, Father Marquette wrote, "Before embarking thereon, we began altogether a new devotion to the Blessed Virgin Immaculate, addressing to her special prayers to place under her protection both our persons and the success of our voyage. And after mutually encouraging one another, we entered our canoes." They had entered the unknown. Certainly they had doubts. Would they find friendly Indians amenable to Marquette's teaching? Or would they find murderous savages? Would they find a land rich in furs? Or would they find instead the promised monsters and meet a lonely death?
This is a tremendously rewarding experience. We are seeing a side of America that none of us really believed existed anymore.
I'll explain the whole thing.
I am going to present Monsieur Joliet with the key to our city.
Everywhere we go, we are greeted warmly. Complete strangers have taken us into their home to shower, have dried our clothes, and then whipped up a hot meal. The days are long, but they would be longer if it were not for the people we meet.
I'll be here in summer or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, oh, Danny boy, I love you so.
On June 17th, 1 month after leaving St. Ignace, they enter the Mississippi River. 300 years before, Father Marquette wrote of this moment that they entered the Mississippi with a joy I cannot express. The journal of Father Marquette provides a detailed description of the land along the Mississippi. He marveled at the beauty of that land. Heavily wooded bluffs, slow, clean current of the river, the abundance of wildlife and fish.
We are disappointed that we are seeing no wildlife. It would help break the monotony. There are beautiful, rugged sections along this river, but our enjoyment of them is tempered by the knowledge we cannot drink the river's water, and the scenery is subject to rude interruptions. It is just barely possible to imagine how magnificent it must have been.
Yeah, here he comes.
Did you get my moccasins? Yeah. Great.
This had been scheduled as a rest day. It included a news conference and mass in the morning, then a luncheon. Afternoon is spent doing necessary repairs. Visitors are always present. There is no privacy. But they have adjusted to that.
Yeah, they actually sailed. And they just, when they got up on the lakes, they'd pull over to the bank and cut themselves a piece of tree, piece of branch, hang a piece of shelter canvas on it, and make themselves a crude sail. So they were very dependent, especially up on the lakes. They were very dependent on the wind, and yet, in a funny way, they were afraid of the wind. They were very superstitious about the wind. All through the literature of the voyageurs, you find constant reference to la vieille, which means the old one. They call the wind the old one. And if the wind was right for them, it could help them tremendously, save them hours and hours of paddling and a lot of aching muscles. But if the wind was wrong, up on that big lake, on some of their big 12 and 20-mile traverses, the wind could kick up waves which drowned many, many voyageurs. And for some reason, the voyageurs, now, I think it's because they were basically a river people, and they felt comfortable with the river, but they didn't feel comfortable out on that lake. And there are places where there were some very dangerous rapids, and voyageurs were killed at these rapids all the time, drowned in the rapids when their canoes overturned and they hit rocks. And in fact, there was one rapids where there were, every time a voyageur was killed at a rapids, they put up a cross, and there was one rapids up in Canada where at one time there were 70 crosses from voyageurs who had died there. And yet the voyageurs they didn't seem to have the same fear of the rivers and the rapids that they had of the open water. They didn't like to go out on the lake. And they would pray. Whenever they did have to make a big open water traverse, they'd spend the night before praying, and they were even a little superstitious. They'd hang talismans and wouldn't refuse to talk about certain things because they didn't want to get caught out in that open water in those little canoes by a big, strong, heavy wind.
Determination and quiet sincerity are the hallmarks of this expedition. Somehow those qualities seem to be most appreciated in small towns.
We find it curious that in small towns, people come to the riverbank and listen to us, greet us warmly, and understand what we are doing. But the cities seem so intent with putting us on display, putting on a big show, that the people never get a chance to understand what we're doing and why.
On their 8th day on the Mississippi, Jolliet and Marquette discovered the first sign of other humans, a path leading up and away from the river. They discussed what to do: glide silently past, or make contact and risk being killed by hostile Indians. Father Marquette had joined the expedition, welcoming the blessed necessity of exposing my life for the salvation of all these peoples. The voyageurs did not feel quite the same way about the matter. But Jolliet knew that for the French to control the valley effectively, contact had to be made. The priest and the voyageur silently approached the village, shouted, and waited apprehensively. 300 years later, there is no fear. The friends and relatives have gathered. The private citizens who have worked so hard to realize the dream of the reenactment. Most would give almost anything to be part of it, to be in one of the canoes. But they cannot because of age, business, family. 300 years before, following a great feast of welcome, a chief of the Illinois Indians gave 2 gifts to Jolliet and Marquette. One was a calumet, or peace pipe, as a guarantee of safe passage. The other was one of his young sons to serve as a guide and interpreter. Now, 14-year-old Jeff LeClaire joins the expedition, representing the Indian boy. He is expected to pull a full man's share of the load. At the age of 14, he has 5 years of wilderness canoe experience. Now they are traveling a densely populated section of the Mississippi. Demands on their time are great. They spend more time on land than on water.
I'd like to commission them admirals in the Iowa Navy. The Iowa Navy is known as the left-handed Navy. All the salutes and so forth are done with the left hand.
What have we got there?
A blackberry cobbler.
Ooh.
Do you like that?
I will have a little of that maybe after I eat.
Okay. You sure can have some. It's good.
You know, to coin a phrase, it's a treat to beat your feet in the Mississippi mud.
We arrived in St. Louis in typical 4th of July weather. In order to be accessible, we've had a number of campsites that were less than desirable, but none as difficult to reach.
I was going to say, that's totally different. That's what I want to know.
It's a Good Friday, and you...
We had looked forward to arriving here because a 9-day tricentennial celebration seemed to guarantee us a chance to reach a lot of people. We did meet the descendants of Father Marquette's family, flown in from France for the occasion, but the crowd was smaller than we'd anticipated. So we continue paddling through the industrial heartland of America, marveling at what we see, not so much for what it is, but for what it must have been.
O Father of the waters, your sons and your daughters are gathered here to wish you good cheer. Many a happy returning year. We thank you for all you've done. For the gifts that you brought us, the truths that you taught us, 300 years of laughter and tears, a heaven full of hope and a flood of fears. You took us and made us one. You're the same wide wonder the Pawnee knew, the Sac Fox, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Sioux, slipped from your banks in a birch canoe. Saw the shadow cast by the first tall mast, heard the creaking lanyard, the bearded Spaniard, the robed French priest from the cold northeast. Dios, mon Dieu, my God, they tried to fathom the secret of your pride. They searched, they fought, they knelt, they died. But the dreams that they nourished have risen and flourished on the silvery heels of the paddleboat wheels, moving cotton and coal and the restless soul of a nation yearning to be. No cargo too heavy to load off the levee as the roustabout cruise gave birth to the blues, waiting in New Orleans for the St. Louis news of the Natchez and the Robert E. Lee. Well, we're going now, river, your promise to deliver, to live as one in the rain and sun, and share the navigation till the journey's done. And it's time to meet the sea.
On July 17, 1673, Joliet and Marquette turned north once again from the point at which the Arkansas River joins the Mississippi. They had just experienced a near-fatal brush with Indians. They had learned the Mississippi emptied into the Gulf of Mexico. And they had learned hostile Spaniards and Indians controlled the land farther south.
2428 to Los George to Louis Grant on Channel 6. Yeah, Cap, we're with the Marquette Joliet expedition down here at the mouth of the Arkansas River. Could you give us any...
At the mouth of the Arkansas, tragedy almost overtakes the modern voyageurs. The Marquette canoe falls behind, is overtaken by the dark of a moonless Delta night, and is lost on the treacherous vastness of the lower Mississippi. Their companions anxiously set up camp and keep the vigil. They finally arrive, exhausted by the physical effort and the mental strain of facing danger on a very personal level, and mindful of the fact that in just a few short hours, they must face the most feared part of the voyage. The next morning, they start upriver, a task that Father Marquette wrote, gives us much trouble.
Now we'll find out if all those who said it can't be done are right. We have to average 25 miles a day upstream for the next month. It's like being in a sauna bath 24 hours a day.
They have been on the water for 2 months, and in that time, one question constantly has loomed larger. Can they make it upstream against the current of the Mississippi? The natives along the river have been unanimous in predicting failure.
You'll go down it, you can't come back up it. The current's too bad, too stout. I just never heard anybody doing it before, and I just don't believe you can do it.
The Mississippi is several miles shorter than it was when Joliet and Marquette traveled it. The oxbow bends have been eliminated. But their elimination and the channelization of the river had made the current even stronger than it was 300 years before. There are no performances, no community suppers, no autograph seekers. Only a silent, primitive, physical contest with the river.
Paddling upstream for 12 hours a day is like shoveling rock. It's not exciting, it's not dramatic, but it's damned hard work. We don't face many sudden crises, but what we do face is a constant slogging endurance contest with the river. And this is calling on our qualities of endurance more than any other portion of the trip has.
Two factors that make the struggle so difficult are the product of modern society. They cannot drink the river's water and must carry heavy water jugs with them. Then there are the wing dams, dikes jutting out into the river that were built to control and channel the currents. They cannot paddle around them. The swirling currents at the end are too strong. Instead, they must drag the canoes over the dams, struggling with the current, trying to avoid damage to the canoes or themselves. Incredibly, they are 8 days ahead of schedule coming up the Mississippi.
Let us pray.
There is time to rest, time to reflect.
Father, you have given us much, and in these short weeks you have given us an experience of your created world, which we are very grateful for. We are also grateful for all the people that we have met, for all the things that we have been able to accomplish. And we hope and pray that all of this will, in a very real sense, enrich people's lives. I think people need an opportunity to celebrate their identity. And I think in many of the towns, we've provided people the chance to celebrate, to work together, plan together, and come together. We might just pause and give thanks for all that he has allowed us to experience in this voyage, the natural beauty, people, our own association with one another. Lee is always kidding me about the remark we heard. I think it was in Dubuque. As we were carrying one of the chests up the side of the muddy hill towards the campsite, some kid said, "Gee, you must be pretty strong for a priest." This was the last day on the Mississippi. It has shown us its currents and swirls, eddies and dikes, tug backwash and whirlpools. We have great respect for its power and awesome presence. It is ever alive. We have seen and met its challenge and learned to live with it, and we have enjoyed the relationship. We're pleased with our accomplishment, but there is a special sadness too. The lower Mississippi is wild and free, unconquered by man. I fear that will not be true as we proceed north.
Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, here we come. I hope and pray to stay he'd never come. I say, isn't this trip a box of birds?
The Jolliet-Marquette expedition. We, the village of Campsville, do hereby rename the two streets which front on the Illinois
On August
River.
19th, 3 months after leaving St. Ignace, they begin ascending the Illinois River towards Chicago and Lake Michigan. They have paddled 2,151 miles.
As we went down the Mississippi River, in every town that we passed through, there were people who wish us well, but there were also the people who were very, very skeptical about what we were doing. And they would say to us, "You are going down the Mississippi, huh?" And we say, "Yes, and we are coming back up." And they say, "Well, maybe you are going down, but you are not coming back up, I tell you that, because I have lived on this river all my life, and nobody paddled back up the Mississippi." We met a young man in New Madrid, and he said to us, "I bet you 1 case of beer that you never come up the Mississippi." We meet fishermen along the river, and they say to us, "Where are you going?" And we say, "Up the Mississippi." And they say, "No, no, that is impossible. It cannot be done." And then we meet a newspaper reporter in Memphis. He write in his paper, he say, within 2 days, those voyageurs, after they turn around and try and paddle against the current of the Mississippi, within 2 days, those voyageurs will pack their canoe and trucks and go home to Chicago with their tails between their legs. Huh? Ladies and gentlemen, on August 19th, after successfully ascending the Mississippi River for 591 miles, we turned into the Illinois at Grafton. And the next time someone tells you one of your dreams is impossible, don't listen to them, huh?
Friendly Indians had told Marquette and Joliet of another river, one that provided a shortcut to Lake Michigan. Their mapping of the Illinois River would provide the French with a network of water routes through which they could develop the heartland of America. Both men marveled at what they saw. Marquette wrote, "We have seen nothing like this river that we enter as regards its fertility of soil, its prairies and woods." Joliet, the entrepreneur, noted that in this land a man could begin planting crops immediately, rather than spending 10 years clearing the land of trees, as was common practice in New France. Just 75 years after they passed through, 800,000 pounds of wheat flour was exported downriver to New Orleans from this area. The area they discovered and mapped became America's heartland, perhaps the richest region on the face of the earth, supplying a major portion of America's food supply, manufactured goods and services, and holding 16% of the United States population. Father Marquette was the first European to see the vast herds of buffalo that roam the Midwestern prairies, and the first to describe how the Indians used every portion of the animal. For the voyageurs, the buffalo also were an important food supply. The buffalo herds have disappeared. A meal of buffalo meat is a special occasion for the modern voyageurs.
They used to sit down and eat up to 11 pounds at a meal. Then they would take different parts of the body, and it wouldn't have any vegetables, but just straight meat deal. And scrape and clean the intestines, wash it out, wrap up, take out the tongue, and wrap the tongue in the intestines and bake it. And they'd take out the liver. They'd slice the liver very thin. Sometimes they'd eat it raw. Sometimes they'd cook it. They used to save the liver bile and dip pieces of meat in the bile. It was their substitute for salt. They didn't have any salt.
August 28th, a special welcome at Illinois Starved Rock Park. 300 years before, Marquette and Joliet found a large Indian village here. The Indians extracted a promise from Father Marquette that he would return to teach them Christianity. Some 19 months later, on the 8th of April, 1675, Father Marquette, though deathly ill, returned and opened the mission of the Immaculate Conception, the first mission in the land he had explored. On the 14th of April, 1675, after saying Easter Mass, Father Marquette's voyageur companions loaded the weakened priest in a canoe and tried desperately to return to St. Ignace. Father Marquette died en route near the present city of Ludington, Michigan. Among the more important discoveries of Joliet and Marquette was the Chicago Portage. It was the key to the inner continent, the vital link connecting the Great Lakes to the Mississippi River network. Trappers, traders, and settlers moved into the inner continent through it and avoided long, difficult overland routes that would have had to be hacked out of the wilderness. 300 years later, the voyageurs find an oozing, stinking river and weedy, trash-littered banks at this historic site.
You would think that our two canoes would glide majestically up the Des Plaines River. We would land, step out on a shore, and describe to you, the people, a scene of clean, sparkling streams and verdant growth. And instead, we had to crawl ignominiously in the shore through a sewer, which you and I and the politicians and the other people of this society have allowed to happen because of our apathy and our neglect. I smell as if I had just crawled out of a disposal plant, and it's right over here. This is the legacy that our ancestors have left to us, and this looks like the legacy we're going to leave to the most important citizens here, the youngsters in this crowd. I don't feel particularly happy, nor do I feel particularly proud to belong to a society that can do this to an environment in the name of civilization. Because a civilization that can allow this to happen makes me feel like crying, not for me, or how I smell, or how I look, but for the dead wood duck we saw a half a mile down the river, for the cart that we saw lying on its side, for the crayfish that crawled on top of a barrel for a breath of fresh air.
Derrière chez nous, le pain étang. En roulant ma boule. Derrière chez nous, le pain étang. En roulant ma boule. Bravo canard, vent baignant. Rouli, roulant ma boule roulant. En roulant ma boule roulant. En roulant ma boule. Bravo canard, vent baignant. En roulant ma boule. Bravo canard.
Chicago. 300 years before, Louis Joliet observed the location was perfect for a settlement. Many of these men live here. It's a chance to see families and friends. The welcome, the applause, and the celebration all help ease tempers that have been frayed to the breaking point by 10 days of temperatures in the 90s and long days struggling upriver.
avec son grand fusil en roulant ma boule, visant le noir, voulant le blanc, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant.
Our men have had a pretty rough 2 days of it, the last couple of days, struggling up the last few miles to that height of land known as the Chicago Portage. Partly because of the problems that we have caused, pollution and otherwise. But they are now here looking forward to the clear waters of Lake Michigan, of which we're all so proud. I'm very happy to see the dignitaries before me, and I would like at this time to introduce our favorite mayor, the Honorable Richard J. Daley, to say a few words.
We hope working together we can make our city a better city and fulfill the prophetic words of those early explorers and priests that told us what it would be. Congratulations to all who have played a part in having this two-day celebration of the great journey of 300 years ago.
Somehow it seems as though the voyage should be over now. But we must guard against that feeling because we are now back on Lake Michigan and away from the protection afforded by the rivers. If we don't hit bad weather, we should achieve our goal of returning to Green Bay on September 19th.
Mais j'ai pris la plus belle, j'ai point choisi. Mais j'ai pris la plus belle, j'ai vu monter derrière moi sur ma selle. C'est l'aviron qui nous mène, c'est l'aviron qui...
It was early in September also when Joliet and Marquette turned north along the western shore of Lake Michigan and headed for a mission at Green Bay, Wisconsin.
It snowed the night before we left, and we spent 10 days on Lake Michigan being very cold and watching the seasons change as we came down. We saw the spring flowers, the ducks coming back. As we moved our ways farther south, we started to see the beginning of summer, on into the heat of summer in the southern Mississippi, and then we turned around and came back up north and started to see, as we do now, the changing of the season into fall. The trees change colors and the leaves fall, and to us, as to the voyageur, this was a sign that soon his highway, the river and the lake, would be frozen. So it was important for him to start returning to his home. And he would sing a song to his friends, telling them that soon he would be back in the spring, once again to trade with them.
Adieu donc belle rive du calque manqué. Voilà le temps qu'arrive, il faut nous séparer. L'hiver est arrivé et tous ces embarras sont rassemblés. Jack Boy les conduira, Jack Boy les conduira.
Joliet also did not see the development of the land he explored. Returning to Montreal with his maps and detailed journal, his canoe overturned in the treacherous Lachine Rapids. He survived, but all else was lost. The place in history that would have been his fell instead to Father Marquette. His was the only journal of the voyage. During the voyage, Joliet had no time for trading. When he returned, he was sued by his creditors. The government refused to grant him land or trading rights in the country he had explored. Eventually, he became a moderately successful businessman. During the next 100 years, French development of the Midwest contributed to its eventual assimilation with the United States following the Revolutionary War. The French villagers in Illinois joined forces with the Americans in 1778.
I was taught that our country was developed from the east to the west by the covered wagon. If they tell you that, you say, excusez-moi, that is not so. Because our part of the country was developed from the north to the south, not by the covered wagon, but by the canoe. And it was the French that did it. And you know something else? They will tell you democracy was born in the East, perhaps in Philadelphia. If they tell you that, you say, excusez-moi, that is not so. Democracy began in my state of Illinois because the Frenchmen and women voted, and you did not have to be rich, while meantime, out east, only men could vote, and they had to be rich. So you see, we have very much to be proud of.
J'ai rencontré trois jolies demoiselles. C'est l'aviron qui nous mène, qui nous mène. C'est l'aviron qui nous mène en haut.
J'ai rencontré trois jolies demoiselles.
J'ai rencontré trois jolies demoiselles.
J'ai pas choisi, mais j'ai pris la...
On the evening of September 18th, these men approached their last campsite, just a few miles outside Green Bay, Wisconsin. You wonder what the reaction of the original voyageurs was at this moment. Unbridled joy? A calm, professional, jobs-done attitude? A boisterous party? Perhaps the best clue comes from those who followed in their path.
It's all over, huh? But the shouting.
Kids, please get back. Please, please, please get back. Give them.
Hey, buddy, you made it. Great to do it.
No.
Great.
Who did it?
Oh, I can't.
Tell you.
I saw him.
Take it away from
I'm so proud. I'm so proud.
Les voyageurs! Les voyageurs!
Father, we are most grateful today for bringing us back here to the successful completion of our voyage. We thank you for the men whom we followed, the voyageurs of 1673, and for their spirit. We thank you for a safe and successful completion to our 4 months on the rivers and the lakes.
Ah, mes amis, I could carry or paddle or walk or sing with any man I ever saw. I have been for 24 years a canoeman and 41 years in the service. Hey, Vivi, no portage was ever too long for me, eh? 50 songs could I sing. I have saved the life of 10 voyageurs. I had 12 wives and 6 running dogs. I spent all my money in pleasure. But were I young again, I should live my life the same way over. There is no life so happy as the life of a voyageur.
Le marinier qui m'y menait, canot d'Écosse qui vole, il vint amoureux de moi. Canot d'Écosse qui volera. À chaque mot qu'il me disait, canot d'Écosse qui vole, disait mamie, embrassez-moi. Canot d'Écosse qui volera. Nanny, monsieur, je n'oserais si mon papa le savait, canot d'Écosse lui volera. Fille battue, ce serait moi, canot d'Écosse qui vole, mais qui sait donc qu'il lui dit...
I had thought that events in history occur, they come and go, and people participate in them. But somehow certain significant events come and occur, and the spirit lasts, and it seems to generate in those who participated in the event a new spirit or a new elan for life. I think all of us on the voyage have participated in a significant event in history. It's over now, but I believe that the spirit that was generated by this event is felt in us, and certainly experienced in some form by the many people that we have met, talked with, and sung for.
Derrière chez nous, y a un étang, en roulant ma boule. Derrière chez nous, y a un étang, en roulant ma boule. Trois beaux canards s'en vont baignant, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule. Trois beaux canards s'en vont baignant, en roulant ma boule. Trois beaux canards s'en vont baignant, en roulant ma boule. Le fils du roi s'en va chassant, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule. Le fils du roi s'en va chassant, en roulant ma boule. Le fils du roi s'en va chassant, en roulant ma boule. Avec son grand fusil d'argent, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule. Avec son grand fusil d'argent, en roulant ma boule. Avec son grand fusil d'argent, en roulant ma boule. Visa le noir, tua le blanc, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule. Visa le noir, tua le blanc, en roulant ma boule. Visa le noir, tua le blanc, en roulant ma boule. Ô fils du roi, tu es méchant, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule. Ô fils du roi, tu es méchant, en roulant ma boule. Ô fils du roi, tu es méchant, en roulant ma boule. D'avoir tué mon canard blanc, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule. D'avoir tué mon canard blanc, en roulant ma boule. Derrière chez nous, y a un étang, en roulant ma boule. Derrière chez nous, y a un étang, en roulant ma boule. Trois beaux canards s'en vont baignant, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule. Trois beaux canards s'en vont baignant, en roulant ma boule. Trois beaux canards s'en vont baignant, en roulant ma boule. Le fils du roi s'en va chassant, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule. Le fils du roi s'en va chassant, en roulant ma boule. Le fils du roi s'en va chassant, en roulant ma boule. Avec son grand fusil d'argent, roulis, roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule, roulant, en roulant ma boule.